Hi, my name is Matthew Hersberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. Coming up in this episode, you're going to meet Dr. Grant Miller, who is one of the rising stars in our industry. And I had the good fortune of meeting Grant a couple of years ago when he was at an inflection point where myopia management finally just clicked into place for him. And he's going to go more in detail in that in the episode. But he's got a lot of great ideas. He has the very essence of going all in. And he is somebody who I use as an example when consulting at other practices. So all of that and more is coming up in the regular version of this episode. But if you're a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset, if you went to our Substack and became a paid supporter or went to myopiamindset.com and clicked on the subscriber button, you'll get an additional 30 minutes of this conversation and all of the great pearls and wisdom that Grant has to offer. All right, let's get to the episode. All right, on this edition of the podcast, I have with me Dr. Grant Miller. He's an optometrist and myopia management specialist practicing in River Grove, Illinois. He's a professional affairs consultant for Johnson & Johnson, and his practice is a partner with Treehouse Eyes Myopia Care for Kids, in which Dr. Miller won the 2024 Rookie of the Year award for being one of the top myopia control practices in North America. He's also appeared on WGN's national broadcast to talk about myopia management, and he is certainly a rising star in our industry. Dr. Grant Miller, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me and calling me a star. I love it for the ego.
Yeah, you definitely are a rising star. Okay, so one of the top reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because I use you as an example all the time. And when it comes to someone who, let's go back to when I first met you, because I think this kind of paints the picture. So a couple of years ago, when I first started working for Johnson & Johnson as a clinical sales consultant, I was with them for a couple of years. And I was shadowing Ambreen, who is a clinical sales consultant in the Chicago area. And my role is I was like the white space guy is what they called it. So they sent me all over the country, but I live in Chicago. So I took every opportunity I could to shadow Ambreen and learn from her. She is amazing. And she brought me in on a lunch that she was hosting for you and your wife, who you guys practice together. And she had kind of set the situation up that y'all had done some ortho-K up to that point with limited amounts of success and failure, and then had hit this inflection point, and now you were on a roll. Does that match up with the timeline with you?
Nailed it.
Okay, so that's the point I want to focus on first and foremost, is that moment where things clicked into place for you. So paint us a picture, set it up for us. What was your journey like up until that moment with the success and failure part?
Yeah, I would say I'm always been someone that's not afraid of failure. I welcome it because I think it makes we have to fail to be better to get where we are. So, flashback to when we got the office in 2019, we were just having that conversation. We kind of knew about myopia control. And so it was just, let's talk to every parent. And then, after 2 years of talking to them, then we started seeing that really ramp up. And then ortho-K started getting more popular. So I jumped into the deep end and went right for a post LASIK and a -8 multifocal for my first two fits. So when you talk about trial by fire, that's how I learned. And that's what started this all.
Yeah. Yeah. So then if you're jumping into the deep end with that, what got you interested in ortho-K? Was it something that you had just started hearing about? Walk us through it.
Yeah, my wife, who was working with another doc that acquired an ortho-K practice, actually went to shadow Carrie Hersberg. So, and she was down there talking about, my husband's a -12, and this crazy guy's like, we can do ortho-K on that. And so when he said that, I was like, this is interesting. So really, I give a lot of this to Carrie for just kind of spinning the gears in my head. And from there, we just started doing it.
And what got those gears spinning? What appeals to you about ortho-K and myopia management?
for me, just being a -12 with a 28 axial length, like there's a personal like battle that I have with this, but I struggled with soft lenses. I wore scleral lenses for 4 or 5 years and those stopped working. So it was another non-surgical option because, these are my eyes. If I do a surgical procedure and there's a complication, like I can't really do my job. So that was kind of spinning some gears of how can you do this? And so it started, understanding corneal change and this stuff with this lens. And it just really got me excited to try it.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point to focus on because a lot of the docs who are successful with Ortho-K specifically are docs who have lived and breathed the experience of being that kid with struggling vision problems and concerns around that. And that is a part of like creating that passion and genuine authenticity. I know those are two things at the top of your list. It says it on your website that your values, number one is authenticity, which I love. And that part of relating that kind of information to parents, I think, is a huge part of what sells you as the expert and provides that genuine authenticity. Would you agree with that?
Agree. And we even hear that back from the parents. I mean, some will sound like I'm going crazy because I'm so passionate about it, but like this is something we can do for your child that will carry with them for the rest of their life. And that to me is that's huge. Like that's meaningful to me.
Right. And when you first started talking about Ortho-K with parents, was there any kind of squeamishness or shyness around doing it? Because that is not your personality, as I understand it. The Grant Miller I know is like he sees something, he's interested, he starts studying it, he works it out, and then he starts implementing it. Is that how it went with Ortho-K? You just immediately started talking about it with every single parent that came into your practice?
Yeah, it was, here's our options we have. This one, you talk about the lifestyle benefits, but to me, it's easy to talk about it because you're not worried about your child fumbling a soft lens while they're at school, atropine. We could go on hours talking about the good and bad of that. And so like for me, it's a straightforward to that because we know it's working because we see the topos that follow up. Again, they're not doing anything during the day with the lens, which is awesome. And then as we're seeing more ocular surface disease in these 8, 10, 15-year-olds, like that's in the back of our mind of we want to make sure we protect the front of the eyes for their long-term too.
And when you started talking to your parents about what you were doing, did they, initially just pick it up instantly? Did you get some no's in the beginning? Like what happened?
I think the important thing I tell everybody is be prepared for no's because, human beings as a species, we are reactive. We're not proactive. Like we got to the top of this chain just from pushing through everything and then finally going, hey, that hurts. Now I need to do something about it. So yeah, I would say no's are the high points. And, we're in a very mixed community outside of Chicago. So we have a very low working class. We have a lot of transplants from other countries coming in. So there's an education and a language barrier a lot of the times. So no's don't hurt us. It's unfortunate when you hear them, but we know that when we see them back in 3 to 4 months and then continue to see them every 3 to 4 months for axial length and then that refraction, and they see that data changing, we know they're going to do it eventually. I'd love for them to say yes immediately, but those aren't our people. And so we got to get in, work in the trenches, and then we'll get the outcome.
Yeah. I always ring this bell that the practice I grew up in, Herzberg Optical, we would work on patients for 5 years before we saw a turnaround. Back then, when I was like a kid in my parents' practice, we didn't have half the stuff that we have today. We didn't have the internet as we understand it today.
Yeah.
And this is why I use you as an example for many things about just immediately start talking about it with parents, right? Because it's not like you had it down perfectly the first time you decided to talk about it. And I'm sure
100%.
you made a few mistakes or it didn't come out the way that you were intending. And I want to stress that, like, you have to be able to just start talking about it and then adjust from there. So like, do you have any recommendations for docs who are just starting out, who are trying to perfect their presentation? Like, what would be your tips for them?
I always start with, like, we were taught to educate and we learned and we're educated in school. And then what we do is we open our mouth and educate parents. So our big thing is we need to learn how to communicate. And I really think Steve Bargo does a great job at talking about, the psychology of decision making and how we talk to patients and parents, because for me to go on about this disease that they're going to carry for the rest of their lives and all these complications, like as parents, we don't care what happens in 40 years. We're presumed to be dead. So we want to shift that on. I'm concerned for Johnny's eyes because this is increasing risk for problems later. Does this concern you? So you try to bring the parent into the conversation some. Don't just say, here's all this information, because you're just going to hit them in the face with too much and they're going to be confused and walk away.
Do you ask like leading questions to get information and create like a focal point between you, or a connective point between you and the parent, which is more often mom, right? So what would be your advice for doing that? Because I feel like a lot of the practices that I've been in where I'm like, look, you just have to start talking about it. Like, there is no super easy way unless you're a gregarious individual and you're very social. There's just no way to like do it perfectly. So you just have to say, hey, I don't know if you know about this. I have some questions for you, and then take it from there. So what are some great starter questions that you figured out in the beginning? Like, do you blast them with the information first, or do you just like ask them general questions about like screen time, school, stuff like that?
Yeah, this was just last week. We may touch on like getting staff involved, but like I bombed talking to a parent because we're not going to be perfect 24/7. And so I walked out of there going, what did I say? Like, why did I say it that way? And, you're juggling life. You got a sick toddler, a car drives through your building. Like, we're handling tons of stuff as practice owners and then even as associates. So you can't expect perfection, but, the staff was able to carry that one over. And so we built her to a spot where that's just a seamless process. Now, like your patients, how affluent your area, I think really puts you in a lane of how you can be, because you can read a patient and judge them from the start, but that's not the full story, because Medicaid is a huge patient base for us. And people go, you see Medicaid, but I'm like, if you can sell this in a manner to any parent, no matter the money, they will find a way to we have parents that advance their 401ks to pay for their kids' ortho-K. And so you kind of read the parents, you don't want to assume. And from there, I just react in the moment. So if I can tell the parents not super into the convo, or they've got a sibling next to them, like maybe I'd back off a little bit and give them a little bit and then say, hey, here's this intro. Let's see you guys back in 3 to 4 months so we can check some measurements again, and then kind of do some like drip marketing where we just kind of nudge this problem along.
Right.
And other people like will say, hey, he's a -6 and he's 7 years old. Like, we need to do something now. So I'll change my tone on those.
Right. Yeah. There's a difference between like a 4-alarm situation where like, like you said, you got a -6 and you have to do something about it. You have to say something about it. You have to, convey the critical importance of what's happening. For a lot of other parents, like, and I think that some docs don't understand this because, you're in your practice, you see patients, they come to see you, but we have to put ourselves back in the headspace of the parent, right? Like they go to work, they pick up their kids from school. Maybe their kids have extracurriculars that day. Like, what am I going to do for dinner? It's the holidays. I don't want to talk to my mother-in-law, or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden their optometrist is like, hey, there's a myopia epidemic, or, there is an issue that I want to talk to you about. And there's a genetic component to it, or there could be a genetic component to it. And then there's all this, like, them in their headspace about it, and there's a lot of guilt associated with that, and they may not even be in the best position to hear it. So when you have a parent who you can sense that the conversation isn't going exactly the way that you want, what kind of C's do you start, putting in? Like you mentioned follow-up visits, like you measure for axial length, for instance. Like, talk about how that is a huge benefit to like re-entering that conversation again.
Yeah, like I wanted to step back because you made a good comment there. It's like, when you're throwing all this information, like creating part of that system where you know how you're going to follow up everybody kind of helps pull back some of that need and that desire to force it down people's throats. So to us, the system is new kid. If they're pre-myopic refraction, if that axial length is suspicious, then they're automatically scheduled for a 3 to 4 month axial length visit. And they just come in, axial length, that's it. I'll follow up if I'm concerned. But then if we can tell those parents are interested, they do a virtual consultant through our Treehouse Eyes, which is a huge benefit to us. And then if you can tell that they're super sold, like, let's bring you guys back in a week. You're going to sit down with me. We're going to go through 20 minutes of just talking and opening this up. So because that system's there, like, I don't have to think as much and react as much, because I just say my 60-second mini consult of the problem, and then from there, call to action to return.
Right. And when you have them back for the consultation, is that something that you charge for, or is that something that like you leave up to the situation in the moment? Because the reason why I'm asking is because there is this huge stigma around low income demographics. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned was from Glenda Aleman, who I'm definitely going to have on the podcast.
You should.
And she talks all about how you should not make this decision for the parent. Like, if the parent is low income, you should not be like, well, they can't pay for it, so I'm not going to offer it. She says you should offer it to them, let them decide whether it's something they are interested in doing or not. Don't discount them out of the conversation. So for the consult, like, how do you do that? And what are the particulars?
Yeah, consults, we've never charged for them. Our patient base is always hard. If we're trying to tack on another $50 or something, like, they're going to turn away. So to us, it's one less conversation. When I started, I was probably doing 45-minute to hour-long consults, and now it's ironed down to 15 to 20 minutes. So, like, my chair time is very reduced. But to me, like, this is part of selling myopia control and myopia management. So I that's built into our program fees. So there's enough offset in that to where it can cover, if, we do 5 consults and I waste my time, then, a couple extra myopia programs offsets that time. Yeah.
And I love that you said, mention time, because that is one of the other ways that I constantly refer back to you. Like, I can't tell you how many practices I've been in where we start going, like, I'm going to talk about INR. We start going over INR, and I'm like, you got to meet this Dr. Grant Miller, who this is one of the first stories you told me about, and I absolutely love it, and I share it every chance I can get. But and I'm going to let you tell it. But basically, the setup is Grant had a kid who just was not getting the INR down, and he sat for this kid for how many sessions was it in total?
He's not my record, but it's 11.
What is your record if that's not?
14.
Wow. Because I like, and the reason why I use this as an example is because these are successful cases, right? These kids eventually got it.
They're in years 2 and 3 now of ortho-K. And it's like, to me, we're a small office, so it's part of what has to happen. I can't train a contact lens technician in this market. So for me to spend this time, the parents love the crap out of this, because they're like, hey, my doc's been a one-on-one time. But I was that nerdy, dorky kid that struggled in the beginning too. So you have to make it fun and enjoyable, because a lot of kids get turned out of contact lenses in general because you have some technician just being an a-hole that can't talk to kids, and then they're turned off of it. So yeah, with every kid, it's try, if we fail 20 minutes, come back, couple days, reset. And, from there, like, for him, he was our first ability case. And so we're this is going to be a train wreck. So I think by the 10th visit, we found out he's into YouTube. So what we did is, Mom, can we record him doing this? So we set this up as if he's streaming, putting on contacts.
Oh, wow.
And from there it clicked. So, like, that's what I think is unique to me, is because I'm creative and can find ways to do these things. But yeah, he's in year 3, and that week follow up, that mom goes, what the heck did you do to my child? Because he's this nerdy myopic kid. He's in a shell, and now he's a whole new human being. And to me, that's the fun win on this. At the end of the day. It's the small stuff. Like, it's not about the money, but it's like, this stuff's going to change this kid's life for the rest of his life. He'll forget about me, but like, that's big.
It is big, and that's why I love, that's what I've been doing on each episode, is sharing these patient stories, right? Because I think that you all are really defined by your patients. Like, there's this point where it's like, it is this life-changing aspect. Like, I use the multiverse example, the alternate reality. Like, there's an alternate reality where Dr. Grant Miller didn't spend that much time with that kid, and that kid didn't get it and they didn't come out of their shell and their life didn't change, and he changed the course of that kid's life for the better, not just for their vision, but also from what it sounds like, their personality as well.
Oh, 100%. And that's what's fun about seeing these kids grow in the practice, because, you're seeing them grow and then this is added into their lives. And like, you just don't do that in regular eye care, like with anything.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. And that's one way to differentiate yourself as a different eye doctor than what everybody else is seeing. I think this is something that a lot of new to myopia management docs struggle with. Is I say you have to position yourself as an expert in some way, shape, or form. And they're like, I just don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I'm an expert. And it's like, okay, let's find out what you are comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you had mentioned that you made this process fun, because I have dealt with scenarios where I observe INR and I watch that the tech, like, or whoever, give up after like 2 or 3 tries. And I pull them aside and I say, hey, as soon as that kid sees that you're done, you're frustrated, like, it's over. Like, and I think the importance of like having somebody who's really good with kids, you're great with kids. You are kind of like a kid yourself, which so many ortho-K doctors are kind of like big kids, or they have that person in their practice that's super good with kids. So what are some of the other things that you do in general to make the INR experience fun?
I always start off with just the beginning, like, what do you like to do for fun? And so when we're already disconnecting, they're going to poke their eye 14 times today.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a read, but then you find out that, hey, they're a baseball player, or, hey, I like to play the piano. And so you can start to tailor your training in certain aspects. And, some people get it. You don't even say a word and boom, that lens is on. But,
Mm-hmm.
that struggling baseball player, it's like, okay, pretend you're in the batter's box and I want you to pick up the seams on that ball. So with your ortho-K lens, look at the edges, find out how it's rotating. And then I want you to just watch that go onto your eye. Or Justin Kwan taught me the keyboard one, because if you can press your keys on a keyboard with your finger, you can take a lens on your finger, and so there's ways to talk to them. And it's like with that patient, we pulled out a camera and recorded him. Like, that made it fun for him, but it made it familiar so he could do it.
Yeah. And then what kind of, I mean, obviously mom was super happy with you. And I know the story, but like, tell us, like, that generated referrals then for your practice, right? Like, this is what I say all the time. I just recorded an episode where I said, like, at Herzberg Optical, all of our external advertising back then didn't work. What worked was referrals. Our parents became like advocates for us, right? You obviously found the same thing, right?
100%. And it's because, again, are people searching for myopia control, myopia slowing progression? Like, while the search terms are increasing, there's still very few people doing that. So internal marketing, word of mouth, have to be like the biggest assets. So what was it? 2 weeks ago, a new patient came in. Mom, this kid's another good story, the cousin. But mom came in and goes, I want the $4,000 lenses. Like, we didn't have to do anything. Like, that's what you want. And
right.
So that was because a word of mouth referral.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. You mentioned also the staff component, which I think is important to focus on, especially like in the practice that I grew up in. Like, we had that kind of Venn diagram of knowledge, right?
100%.
Obviously,
Yep.
I wasn't the most, knowledgeable person in the practice, but I could talk about it. And when doctor handed me the file and said, this is so-and-so, we're going to do the following things for them. Great. I turned to the parent and I say, did doctor talk about myopia management? Or back then it was, did doctor talk about ortho-K with you? He did. Great. Okay. And then we kept going after that. And like, no doc is perfect. No staff member is perfect.
Exactly.
How did you get your staff? Because you and your wife is the dry eye specialist in the practice, which is another thing I want to talk about. You're the myopia management specialist, and then you have one staff member. So how did you find the staff member? How did you bring her up to speed? What kind of ways did you get her incorporated into your practice?
Yeah, we're employeeless for 2 months. So being married and working together for 2 months nonstop was a lovely time. And then she was a patient. So she came from the
Ah.
dental field, zero eye care experience. And she just wanted a place closer to home. So we had joined Treehouse at the start of the year. So they helped train her. We had yourself help work with her too as well. But part of my philosophy is with this is from check-in to checkout, I want everyone in the office to understand what's going on when it comes to myopia management, because our parents and patients spend more time with Sanji than they do with us. So
Hmm.
she needs to be on top of this because the amount of conversions she could make is so much more than what I can do because I'm stuck in an exam, but she's interacting with people all the time.
Right.
So I want her to be comfortable to talk about this, how it works, how much it costs, the side effects, etc. So that way she seems like an expert in this process too.
Yeah. And I remember when we first started going over details in your practice. And I remember that she was not overwhelmed at first, but there was a lot of new information and we just talked through it a lot. And then when I came back like weeks later, she was like on top of her game. Like what helped bridge the gap there for that?
We've always done like every Monday we do an hour long meeting to start the week. So it's,
Mhm.
hey, we have myopia.
All right. Well, that's it for this regular version of my interview with Dr. Grant Miller. For our paid supporters, there's an additional 30 minutes to this discussion. And I know you're interested. You've made it this far. So why not consider becoming a paid supporter of the Myopia Mindset? If you go to our Substack or if you go to myopiamindset.com and click on the subscriber button, then you'll be able to get the extended version of this episode, the extended version of every episode we do, which more often than not is an additional 30 minutes. That's like a whole extra podcast each and every week. And speaking of extra podcasts, paid supporters get an entire bonus episode each and every month. So, this episode with Grant Miller is all about his myopia mindset. The bonus episode for this month is Carrie Herzberg's myopia mindset, and there is so much to learn there. Carrie Herzberg is an absolute guru of our industry. There are so many orthokeratologists who have cited him as a direct inspiration. He's been a mentor to so many successful doctors in this space. And I sit down with him for over an hour to talk about his unique view on doing myopia management, doing orthokeratology. And I really think you should consider becoming a paid supporter. Like I said, you've already made it this far, and it's only $12 a month, which, if you think about it, is basically the cost of a cup of coffee each and every week. And I like to say, hey, if you would buy me a cup of coffee each and every week just to talk about myopia management, to have people on like Grant Miller or Carrie Herzberg to be able to get that weekly shot in the arm for motivation, education, and inspiration, an additional 30 minutes of every episode, and then a whole bonus episode each and every month, then please do so. If you would buy me a cup of coffee, I'd love to have it. So go to our Substack, the myopiamindset.substack.com, or our website, myopiamindset.com. Click on the subscriber button. Thank you so much for considering. This is my main gig. This is how I support my family. And it is a passionate mission of mine to spread the word about what makes myopia management successful and to introduce you to the people who have made it work and are thriving at it. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll see you at the next one.